The sky was burning. Ambassador watched through the cracked windows of the grand sanctuary as fire rained down from above. Orange and red flames painted the clouds in colors of death. The beautiful ocean planet of Aura, was dying. She had lived for 300 years. In all that time, she had never known war. Her people had abandoned violence long ago, back when the first stars were still young. The Orans had chosen peace. They had chosen wisdom. They had chosen to believe that the universe would reward kindness with kindness. They had been wrong. Behind her, 12,000 refugees huddled together in the ancient stone halls. Children cried in their mothers' arms. Elders whispered prayers to gods who did not answer. These were the last of her people. Out of billions, only 12,000 remained. The dominion of the Crimson Maw had come 3 weeks ago. Their ships had blocked out the sun like a plague of metal insects. They did not come to negotiate. They did not come to trade. They came to feed. The Dominion was old, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They were not a single species but a collection of absorbed minds, a hungry machine that consumed entire worlds. They took the bodies of their victims and turned them into soldiers. They took the minds of their victims and added them to their collective intelligence. They had done this to 17 civilizations in this part of the galaxy alone. Now they had come for Aura. Turned away from the window and walked through the crowd of survivors. She touched their hands as she passed. She whispered words of comfort she did not believe. A young mother looked up at her with eyes full of tears. "Ambassador," the woman said, "will anyone come to save us?" Wanted to lie. She wanted to tell this mother that help was on the way. But she had spent her whole life in truth, and she could not abandon it now. "I sent messages to everyone," said softly. "The Galactic Assembly, the elder races, the great empires, they all said the same thing." "What did they say?" "They said they were sorry. They said the Dominion was too powerful. They said it was better to sacrifice one world than to risk many." The mother pulled her child closer and said nothing more. Walked to the communication center at the back of the sanctuary. The machines there were old and damaged. Most of the city had been destroyed in the first wave of attacks, but one small transmitter still worked. She had used it to send her pleas for help. She had used it to beg the galaxy for mercy. No one had answered, not really. She sat down at the transmitter and stared at the controls. Outside, she could hear the sound of Dominion ships getting closer. Their engines made a sound like screaming. Their weapons made the ground shake. Her assistant, a young male named, came to stand beside her. "Ambassador," he said, "the Dominion ground forces have landed. They will reach the sanctuary within the hour." "I know. What should we tell the people?" Closed all 4 of her eyes. What could she tell them? That death was coming, that the galaxy had abandoned them, that their 9 million years of civilization would end in fire and screaming. "Tell them to hold their families close," she said. "Tell them to remember the good times. Tell them that being Oran meant something, even if the universe has forgotten." Nodded and walked away. Opened her eyes and looked at the transmitter one more time. She had sent so many messages. She had begged and pleaded and offered everything her people had. No one had cared. But she was an ambassador. Reaching out was what she did. Even now, at the end of everything, she could not stop herself from trying. She pressed the transmitter button and spoke into the void. "This is Ambassador of Aura. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. The Dominion of the Crimson Maw is destroying our world. We are 12,000 survivors. We have no weapons. We have no ships. We have only our lives and our hope that someone somewhere still believes that life is worth saving." She paused. The words felt empty. Everyone who might have helped had already said no. "I do not know who will hear this. I do not know if anyone will care. But if there is anyone out there who remembers what it means to protect the innocent, please come. We have nothing to offer you. We can only offer our gratitude and whatever future we might build together." She released the button. The message flew out into space at the speed of light. It would reach the nearest star system in 4 years. By then, her people would be long dead. She stood up and walked back to the window. The Dominion harvester ships were descending through the atmosphere now. They were massive things, covered in organic tissue and metal plates. Long tendrils hung from their bellies like the arms of hungry monsters. Those tendrils would reach down and pull her people up into the ships. Then the Dominion would do what they always did. They would consume everything. Watched the ships come closer. She thought about her life. She thought about the ocean she had swum in as a child. She thought about the songs her mother had sung to her. She thought about all the beautiful things her people had created over 9 million years. Soon, all of it would be gone. She heard the refugees behind her starting to cry louder. They could see the ships too. They knew what was coming. Then something happened. The transmitter made a sound, a small beep, an incoming message. Turned around slowly. She did not dare to hope. It was probably just static, or maybe a final insult from the Dominion. She walked to the transmitter and pressed the receive button. A voice came through. It was strange. The language was translated by the machine, but the tone was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was calm. It was confident. It was completely unafraid. Orion vessel, this is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Earth Navy. We received your distress call. Hold your position. His heart stopped beating for a moment. She had never heard of Earth. She had never heard of the United Earth Navy. In all her years of diplomatic work, she had never encountered this species. The voice continued. We're coming. The transmission ended. Stood frozen. Around her, the refugees had gone quiet. They had heard the message too. Ambassador whispered, Who are they? Who is Earth? Shook her head slowly. She did not know. No one knew. Earth was not in any database. Earth was not part of the Galactic Assembly. Earth was a mystery. But they had answered. Someone had finally answered. She looked back at the window. The Dominion ships were still coming. Death was still approaching. But for the first time in weeks, felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Somewhere out there, beyond the burning sky, someone was coming to help. She just had to hold on long enough to see them arrive. 40 years before the Orion distress call, a small probe crashed into the Pacific Ocean on a planet called Earth. The probe was not meant for humans. It was a message from the Galactic Assembly, a routine broadcast sent to all corners of the galaxy. It contained information about the Assembly, about the great civilizations that ruled the stars, and about the threats that existed in the darkness between worlds. When human scientists recovered the probe and decoded its contents, they learned 2 things. First, they learned that humanity was not alone in the universe. There were thousands of intelligent species out there, building empires and traveling between stars. Second, they learned that the universe was not kind. The probe contained records of the dominion of the Crimson Maw. It showed what happened to species that could not defend themselves. It showed planets being harvested, populations being consumed, civilizations being erased from history. But the most shocking part was not the Dominion itself. It was how the rest of the galaxy responded to them. The elder races, the ancient civilizations that controlled the Galactic Assembly, had made a deal. They had agreed to sacrifice younger species to the Dominion in exchange for their own safety. They called it the balance. They called it necessary. They called it the price of peace. To humanity, it looked like murder. The leaders of Earth met in secret. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and scientists, all of them gathered to discuss what they had learned. The debate lasted for weeks. Some wanted to announce humanity's existence to the galaxy. Some wanted to hide forever. Some wanted to build weapons and prepare for war. In the end, they chose all 3. Earth would not announce itself. Not yet. They would hide their radio signals and keep their colonies secret. They would pretend to be nothing more than a primitive world, not worth the attention of the great powers. But while they hid, they would build. For 40 years, humanity worked together like never before. Old enemies became allies. Old borders became meaningless. Every nation on Earth contributed to a single goal: survival. They built shipyards on the dark side of the moon. They built weapons factories in the asteroid belt. They built training centers on Mars and research stations in the clouds of Jupiter. All of it was hidden. All of it was secret. Human scientists studied the technology from the probe and improved upon it. They built faster engines, stronger shields, and deadlier weapons. But they did not stop there. They invented things the galaxy had never seen. Kinetic impactors the size of buildings, designed to punch through any armor. Gravity torpedoes that could crush a ship from the inside. Jump drives that could teleport a vessel directly into an enemy formation. Nuclear charges that could be detonated inside a target's hull. The elder races had forgotten what real war looked like. They fought with rules and traditions, with careful distances and formal surrenders. They had not faced a true threat in millions of years. Humans remembered. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. Every war, every battle, every conflict had taught them something about violence. Now they took all that knowledge and pointed it at the stars. Admiral Helena Vance was born 15 years after the probe was discovered. Her parents were both Navy officers, stationed on the secret base at Europa. She grew up knowing the truth about the galaxy. She grew up knowing that somewhere out there, monsters were eating entire civilizations while the powerful did nothing. When she was 22 years old, a Dominion scouting party found one of humanity's hidden colonies. The colony was small, just a few thousand people living on a frozen moon. Helena's aunt and uncle lived there. Her cousins lived there. Her best friend from childhood lived there. The Dominion killed them all. Helena watched the recordings that the colony's cameras had captured before the end. She saw people she loved being dragged away by machines. She heard their screams. She saw the Dominion ships leave, carrying their harvest back to whatever dark place they called home. That day, Helena made a promise. She would never let it happen again. She rose through the ranks of the United Earth Navy faster than anyone in history. She was brilliant, ruthless, and completely dedicated to one purpose: making humanity strong enough to fight back. By the time she was 45 years old, she commanded the First Fleet, the most powerful military force humanity had ever created. 247 warships, each one designed for a single purpose: destruction. The fleet trained in the outer reaches of the solar system, far from any eyes that might be watching. They practiced formations and tactics. They ran simulations of battles against Dominion forces. They prepared for a war that had not yet started. Helena knew that someday the galaxy would need humanity. Someday there would be a call for help that no one else would answer. When that day came, she wanted to be ready. For 20 years she waited. Then the Iran distress call came through. Helena was on the bridge of her flagship, the UN Defiance, when the message arrived. She listened to Ambassador's words. She heard the fear and the desperation in the alien's voice. She saw the coordinates of Aura and calculated the distance. It would take the fleet 6 hours to reach the planet. 6 hours was a long time. A lot of people could die in 6 hours. But it was not too long. There was still time. Helena opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. "This is Admiral Vance," she said. "We have received a distress call from a planet called Aura. The Dominion is there. They are harvesting the population. The Galactic Assembly has refused to help." She paused. Around her the bridge crew watched and waited. "For 40 years we have hidden in the shadows. For 40 years we have built our strength and waited for the right moment. That moment is now." She stood up from her command chair. "The people of Aura are dying. They have no one else to turn to. The galaxy has abandoned them, just like the galaxy would have abandoned us if they knew we existed. Her voice grew harder. I will not let that stand. We did not build these ships to hide. We did not train for decades to watch innocent people die. We built these ships to fight. We trained to save lives. She looked at the star map on the main screen. Aura was just a small dot, far away and alone. Today, humanity announces itself to the galaxy. Today, we show them what we are. Today, we save the Orans or we die trying. She sat back down. All ships prepare for jump. We leave in 10 minutes. Across the fleet, crews rushed to their stations. Weapons were loaded. Shields were powered up. Jump drives began to charge. In 10 minutes, 247 human warships vanished into the void. They were going to war. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity decided to fight. The Dominion commander had no name. It had consumed too many minds to remember what names were for. It was simply the voice of the swarm, the intelligence that guided 10,000 ships and 1,000,000 soldiers. It floated in its command chamber, surrounded by screens that showed the harvest of aura. The operation was going well. The population centers had been destroyed. The survivors had been gathered into small groups, easy to collect. In a few more hours, every living thing on this world would belong to the Dominion. The commander felt something close to satisfaction. This was what it was made for. This was its purpose. Consume, grow, spread. Then the alarm started. The commander turned its attention to the sensor screens. Something was wrong. The readings made no sense. There was energy building in the space above aura, massive amounts of energy, more than the commander had ever seen in one place. Before it could react, the sky split open. 247 ships burst out of jump space at the same moment. They did not appear at a safe distance, like civilized fleets always did. They appeared directly inside the Dominion formation, so close that their arrival shock waves tore through dozens of harvester ships. The commander had lived for thousands of years. It had consumed millions of minds. It had seen every kind of warfare the galaxy had to offer. It had never seen anything like this. The human ships did not slow down. They did not form defensive lines. They did not wait for the Dominion to respond. They attacked immediately, firing everything they had at point-blank range. Kinetic rounds the size of ground vehicles punched through Dominion armor like paper. Gravity torpedoes collapsed entire sections of ships into twisted metal. Nuclear charges detonated inside carrier vessels, turning them into expanding clouds of fire and debris. On the surface of Aura, Ambassador watched through the cracked windows of the sanctuary. She could not believe what she was seeing. The Dominion ships were dying. Not slowly, not one at a time, but in groups of 10 and 20. The strange vessels that had appeared were moving through the enemy fleet like predators through prey. They did not fight like anything had ever seen. They fought like they did not care if they lived or died, as long as they took their enemies with them. She saw one human ship, badly damaged and trailing fire, turn directly toward a Dominion command vessel. Instead of retreating, it accelerated. The pilot aimed straight for the enemy bridge and crashed into it at full speed. Both ships exploded together. Another human ship lost its main weapons. Instead of withdrawing, it rammed its way through a Dominion formation, using its own hull as a weapon. When it finally broke apart, it had destroyed 3 enemy vessels. The refugees in the sanctuary stopped crying. They stopped praying. They just watched, unable to look away from the impossible battle above them. "Who are these people?" whispered. Shook her head. "I do not know, but they fight like nothing I have ever seen." On the bridge of the UEN Defiance, Admiral Helena Vance stood at the center of controlled chaos. Officers shouted reports. Screens showed damage assessments. The ship shook as enemy fire struck the shields. Helena ignored it all. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching the battle unfold. "Commander," she said calmly, "take the third wing and cut off their retreat vector. I do not want a single Dominion ship escaping this system." "Yes, Admiral." "Captain Torres, your Marines are cleared for boarding operations. Target the large carriers first. I want prisoners for interrogation." "Understood." The Dominion commander watched in disbelief as its fleet fell apart. It had outnumbered the humans 3-1. It should have been an easy victory. Instead, it was a massacre. The humans did not fight fair. They did not keep safe distances. They did not follow any rules of engagement the commander recognized. They threw themselves at the Dominion with a fury that seemed almost insane. The commander opened a communication channel. Perhaps these creatures could be reasoned with. Perhaps they would accept a deal. "Unknown vessels," it broadcast. "You have made a grave mistake. The Dominion is eternal. We cannot be defeated. Withdraw now and we will allow you to live." The response came almost immediately. It was a human female, her voice cold and hard. "This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Earth Navy. The Orans are under our protection. You have one chance to withdraw your forces from this system. If you refuse, we will destroy every single one of your ships." The commander felt anger, an emotion it rarely experienced. These primitives dared to threaten the Dominion. "You are outnumbered," the commander replied. "You cannot win. Watch us." The human ships attacked with renewed fury. They seemed to know exactly where to strike, exactly how to hurt the Dominion most. They targeted command vessels and communication relays. They cut the swarm into pieces that could not coordinate with each other. Within 30 minutes, the Dominion fleet was in chaos. Ships fled in random directions. Formations collapsed. The careful order of the swarm became blind panic. Helena watched the Dominion commander's flagship on her screen. It was trying to escape, running for the edge of the system where it could jump away to safety. "No," she said quietly, "you do not get to run." She ordered her fastest ships to pursue. They caught the flagship before it could escape and surrounded it. Helena gave the commander one final chance to surrender. It refused. She destroyed it herself, firing the Defiance's main weapons until the flagship was nothing but scattered atoms. 37 minutes after the battle began, it was over. The Dominion fleet was gone. Some ships had been destroyed. Some had surrendered. Some had fled into deep space, too damaged and scared to ever return. Helena ordered her fleet to take defensive positions around Aura. Then she looked at the planet below, at the fire still burning on its surface, at the refugees still waiting to see if they would live or die. "Launch the," she said, "we have people to save." On the surface, watched as dozens of small vessels descended from the sky. They were not Dominion ships. They were human ships coming to help. The vessels landed between the sanctuary and the remaining Dominion ground forces. Human soldiers poured out, wearing armor that made them look like metal giants. They formed a line in front of the refugees, weapons raised, ready to fight. The Dominion ground forces hesitated. They had just watched their entire fleet get destroyed. They had just seen what these humans could do. After a moment of confusion, they dropped their weapons and surrendered. A human soldier walked toward the sanctuary. She was tall, with dark hair and eyes that had seen too much pain. She stopped in front of and removed her helmet. "Ambassador," she asked. Nodded, unable to speak. The soldier knelt down so they were at the same level. Her face was tired but kind. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah. Admiral Vance sent me to make sure you're okay." Finally found her voice. "You came, you actually came." Smiled softly. "You called for help, we answered." "But why? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you. Why would you risk so much for strangers?" Looked back at her soldiers, at the refugees they were protecting, at the burning sky above. "Because someone should," she said simply. "Because if we can help, then we have to help. That is what being human means." felt tears forming in her eyes. After so many weeks of despair, after being abandoned by the entire galaxy, someone had finally come. Not for profit, not for power, not for anything except the simple belief that innocent lives were worth saving. She reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us hope." Squeezed her hand gently. "That is just the beginning, Ambassador. We are going to rebuild your world, and we are going to make sure this never happens to anyone else ever again." Above them, the human fleet stood guard over Aura. The Dominion was gone. The refugees were safe, and somewhere out there the galaxy was watching. Everything was about to change. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the battle, recordings reached the Galactic Assembly. Someone on Aura had captured the entire thing. The videos showed Dominion ships exploding. They showed human vessels moving through enemy formations like ghosts of death. They showed soldiers landing on the surface and standing between monsters and innocent refugees. The elder races watched in their ancient halls and felt something they had not felt in millions of years. Fear. High Arbiter of the Collective called an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. The great chamber filled with representatives from 100 civilizations, all of them talking at once, all of them demanding answers. "Who are these humans?" shouted over the noise. "Where did they come from? How did they defeat a Dominion fleet so easily?" No one had answers. Earth was not in any database. Human ships matched no known designs. Human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Ambassador, an ancient creature of living crystal, spoke in a voice like grinding stones. "They are dangerous. They appeared from nowhere and destroyed a force that should have crushed them. We must act before they grow stronger." "Act how?" demanded the Oran representative, a young male who had just received word that his people were saved. "These humans saved my world. They asked for nothing in return. They simply helped because it was right." "That is what worries me," the replied. "No one does anything for free. They must want something: power, territory, revenge. We must discover their true purpose before it is too late." High Arbiter raised her many arms for silence. "We must approach this carefully. The humans have done nothing aggressive toward us. They destroyed the Dominion, which has been a threat to us all for eons. Perhaps they could be useful allies. Or perhaps they will become a worse threat than the Dominion ever was," said the representative of the Empire. "They fight without rules. They throw away their lives like they mean nothing. They are unpredictable and violent." The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to send diplomats. Some wanted to send warships. Some wanted to pretend Earth did not exist and hope the humans would go away. But while the powerful argued, something else was happening across the galaxy. On 1,000 subjugated worlds, enslaved species heard the story of Aura. They watched the recordings in secret. They whispered the name Earth like a prayer. For centuries, these species had lived under the boots of empires. The Dominion harvested some of them. The elder races taxed and controlled others. The Galactic Assembly existed to keep power in the hands of those who already had it. The weak were sacrificed. The strong survived. That was the way things had always been. But now there was something new. Now there was proof that it did not have to be this way. On the mining world of 5, the workers stopped their machines and gathered in the tunnels. They had been slaves of the Empire for 300 years. Their grandparents had been slaves. Their children would be slaves. There was no hope of escape, no dream of freedom. Until now. A young miner named stood before the crowd. In her hands, she held a small device that showed the recording from Aura. "Look at this," she said. "Look at what humans did. They came from nowhere. They had fewer ships. They should have lost, but they won because they refused to accept defeat." The miners watched the battle unfold. They saw human ships ramming enemy vessels. They saw soldiers standing between refugees and death. They saw something they had forgotten existed. Courage. The galaxy told us to give up, continued. The galaxy told us that slavery was our destiny. The galaxy told us that the strong would always rule and the weak would always suffer. She turned off the device. The galaxy was wrong. That night, the miners of Five began planning their rebellion. The same scene repeated across countless worlds. On the factory planets of the collective, workers organized secret meetings. On the agricultural moons of the Or Ascendancy, farmers hid weapons in their fields. On the prison colonies of a dozen empires, inmates started dreaming of freedom. The elder races had controlled the galaxy for millions of years by making everyone believe there was no alternative. Now humanity had shown that alternatives existed. The idea spread like fire through dry grass. Back on Aura, Admiral Helena Vance worked to rebuild what the Dominion had destroyed. Human engineers helped repair the infrastructure. Human doctors treated the wounded. Human ships brought supplies and medicine from Earth. Ambassador spent every day with the Admiral, learning about these strange beings who had saved her people. She discovered that humans were young compared to most species. They had only been traveling in space for a few hundred years. They had not built great empires or conquered vast territories. But they had something the elder races had lost long ago. They had passion, they had anger, they had a fierce belief that right and wrong actually mattered. "I do not understand," said one evening as they watched the sunset over the ruined city. "Your species is so young. Your world is so small. How do you have the strength to fight beings that have existed for millions of years?" Helena thought for a long moment before answering. "Maybe that is exactly why," she said. "The elder races have been around so long that they forgot what it means to struggle. They forgot what it means to fight for survival. They made peace with evil because fighting seemed too hard." She looked at the sky, where human ships still patrolled. "Humans have never had that luxury. We have always had to fight, for food, for territory, for survival. Our entire history is one long story of conflict and struggle. We know what it means to have everything taken from us, and we know what it means to take it back." Nodded slowly. "So you did not come here because you wanted power or territory?" "No. You came because you remembered what it felt like to be helpless, and you did not want anyone else to feel that way." Helena smiled sadly, something like that. A few days later, a message arrived from the Dominion's central hive mind. It was broadcast across all frequencies, meant for the entire galaxy to hear. "Humans of Earth, you have interfered with the natural order. You have destroyed our fleet and killed our children. This act of war will not go unpunished. We are coming for you. We are coming for everyone who stands with you. There will be no mercy. There will be no surrender. We will consume your worlds and add your minds to our collective. You have made yourselves our enemy, and the Dominion does not forget its enemies." The message ended. Helena read it without expression. Then she wrote her reply. "Dominion of the Crimson Maw, we received your declaration of war. We accept. Bring everything you have. Bring your entire fleet. Bring every ship and every soldier and every weapon. We will be waiting. And when you arrive, we will show you what humanity does to those who threaten the innocent." She paused, then added one final line. "We were hoping you would say that." Across the galaxy, people who had lived in fear for centuries read the human response. They saw a young species standing up to the greatest threat in known space. They saw someone finally saying enough. On 100 worlds, rebellions began. On 1,000 stations, people started asking questions. In the halls of the Galactic Assembly, old powers began to tremble. The universe was changing. Something had been set in motion that could not be stopped. And at the center of it all, humanity prepared for war. Not for conquest, not for glory. For everyone who had ever been told they did not matter. For everyone who had ever been sacrificed for the greater good. For everyone who had ever looked at the stars and wished someone would save them. Earth was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 years passed. The Second Dominion War raged across 17 star systems. It was the largest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Millions of ships, billions of soldiers. Entire worlds burned as the two sides fought for the future of all living things. At first, the Dominion seemed unstoppable. They attacked from every direction at once. They threw everything they had at humanity and their allies. They consumed 3 human colonies before the defense lines could be established. But humanity did not break. They never broke. Admiral Helena Vance led the combined fleet from the bridge of the UEN Defiance. Her forces had grown since Aura. Oran engineers designed new ships based on human blueprints. Scientists who had defected from the assembly improved the weapons. A dozen liberated species sent their best warriors to fight alongside human soldiers. The Dominion had expected to face Earth alone. Instead, they faced an alliance of the oppressed, united by a simple idea, that no one should be sacrificed for the convenience of the powerful. The war was brutal. Humanity lost ships and soldiers every day. Sometimes they lost entire fleets. But for every human who fell, the Dominion lost 10 ships. For every colony that burned, 3 Dominion strongholds were destroyed. The elder races watched from their safe borders. Some of them secretly hoped the Dominion would win. A human victory would mean the end of their comfortable order. A human victory would mean change. But change was coming whether they wanted it or not. On the 3-year anniversary of the Battle of Aura, Admiral Vance gathered her commanders for a final briefing. They had pushed deep into Dominion territory. They had destroyed their shipyards and killed their commanders. Now only one target remained. Axis, the throne world, the beating heart of the Dominion. It was not a planet in the normal sense. It was a living thing, a massive bioorganic sphere that had been built from the bodies of 100 consumed civilizations. The Dominion's central hive mind lived there, surrounded by the largest fleet in the galaxy. No one had ever attacked Axis and survived. The enemy has gathered everything for this defense, Helena said to her commanders. 10,000 ships, 20 million soldiers, every weapon they have left. If we fail here, there will be no second chance. Commander Sarah, who had been promoted many times since Aura, spoke up. What about Project Prometheus? Helena nodded slowly. It is ready, but using it will change everything. There will be no going back. Project Prometheus was humanity's final weapon. For 3 years, scientists had worked on it in secret. It was not a bomb or a missile or a fleet. It was something far more dangerous. It was a way to tear holes in the fabric of space itself. The Dominion will never surrender, Helena said. They cannot surrender. Their entire existence is based on consumption and growth. As long as Axis exists, they will keep coming. They will never stop. She looked at each of her commanders. We have to end this, today, no matter the cost. The fleet jumped. They emerged in the Axis system to find exactly what they expected. 10,000 Dominion ships, arranged in defensive formations around the living planet. The hive mind spoke immediately, its voice broadcasting on all frequencies. Foolish creatures, you have come to die. We are the Dominion, we are eternal, we cannot be destroyed. Helena did not bother to respond. There was nothing left to say. The battle began. Human ships plunged into the Dominion formation with their usual ferocity. Weapons fired in all directions. Ships exploded. Soldiers died. The void filled with debris and flame. The Dominion outnumbered the Alliance 10-1. For every human ship destroyed, 3 more Dominion vessels took its place. The Alliance fleet was being pushed back, slowly but steadily losing ground. Ambassador stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the battle unfold. She had insisted on being there for the final confrontation. The humans had saved her people. The least she could do was stand with them at the end. Admiral, she said quietly, We are losing. Helena nodded. I know it is time. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Vance. Fall back to the designated coordinates. Project Prometheus is a go. Repeat, Prometheus is a go. The Alliance ships began to retreat, pulling back from the Dominion formation. The hive mind saw this and felt triumph. The humans were running. They had finally realized they could not win. But then something strange happened. 1,000 Alliance ships stopped retreating. They were older vessels, ships that had been damaged in earlier battles, ships that were too slow or too weak to survive much longer. Their crews had volunteered for a special mission. The ships arranged themselves in a precise pattern, forming a massive ring around the Dominion fleet. Then they did something impossible. They activated their jump drives at the same time, but they did not jump away. Instead, they focused their drives inward toward a single point in space. The hive mind did not understand what was happening until it was too late. 1,000 synchronized jump drives created a focused tier in space-time. The energy released was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. A point of infinite density appeared in the center of the Dominion formation. A singularity, a black hole, created from nothing. Axis tried to run. The Dominion ships tried to escape, but gravity does not care about desires. The singularity pulled everything toward itself with irresistible force. The living planet was the first to go. It stretched and twisted as gravity tore it apart. The hive mind screamed across all frequencies, a sound of pure agony and disbelief. After millions of years, after consuming countless civilizations, the Dominion was dying. In 17 seconds it was over. Axis was gone. The Dominion fleet was gone. The singularity consumed everything and then collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Silence fell across the battlefield. Helena stared at the empty void where the greatest threat in galactic history had existed moments before. She felt no joy. 1,000 human crews had died to make this happen. They had volunteered to sacrifice themselves because they believed some things were worth dying for. It is done, she said quietly. Across the galaxy, Dominion forces stopped fighting. Without the hive mind to guide them, they were lost and confused. Some surrendered, some fled, some simply shut down, unable to function without orders. The war was over. Humanity had won. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed faster than it had in millions of years. The Galactic Assembly collapsed as species that had been oppressed for centuries demanded freedom. New nations formed. Old empires fell. The comfortable order that had existed since before humanity was born crumbled into dust. Some of the elder races tried to resist. They sent fleets to restore their control, but they found that the liberated species had learned from humanity. They had learned that the weak could defeat the strong if they were willing to fight hard enough. 6 months after Axis, Ambassador stood on the bridge of the Defiance one last time. The ship was orbiting Earth, the small blue planet that had changed everything. Helena stood beside her, looking at her. "It is beautiful," said. "I see why you fought so hard to protect it." "We did not fight for Earth," Helena replied. "We fought for everyone. Earth was just where we started." Turned to face the Admiral. A question had been bothering her for 3 years, and she needed to ask it. "Why," she said, "at Aura when you answered our distress call, why did you come? You did not know us, you owed us nothing. You could have stayed hidden and let the Dominion take us. No one would have blamed you." Helena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. 40 years ago, we learned that the galaxy did not care about us. We learned that if the Dominion came for Earth, no one would help. We would die alone, forgotten, just another species consumed by the darkness. She looked at with eyes that held old pain. That feeling never left us. The loneliness, the knowledge that we were worthless in the eyes of the universe. We spent 40 years preparing for war, but we also spent 40 years asking ourselves a question. What question? If we ever had the power to help someone else, would we? Or would we become just like the elder races, sacrificing the weak to protect ourselves? Helena smiled sadly. When your distress call came, we finally had our answer. We would not become what we hated. We would not let anyone feel the way we felt, even if it meant revealing ourselves, even if it meant war, even if it meant death. She put her hand on shoulder. We came because no one came for us. We saved you because no one would have saved us. And we will keep fighting for the innocent because that is the only way to make sure no one ever feels that alone again. Felt tears forming in her eyes. After everything she had seen, after all the death and destruction, she finally understood. Humanity had not come to conquer the galaxy. They had not come for power or territory or revenge. They had come to change things, to prove that the universe did not have to be cruel, to show that someone somewhere would always stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, species who had lived in fear for centuries were building new lives. Somewhere out there, children who had been born as slaves were growing up free. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning what it meant to have hope. And at the center of it all was a small blue planet called Earth, home to a species that had refused to accept the way things were. The elder races had ruled through fear for millions of years. They had told everyone that the weak must be sacrificed, that the strong would always dominate, that there was no point in fighting. Humanity had proven them wrong. The galaxy trembled, but it was not trembling from fear anymore. It was trembling with something new, something that had been missing for far too long. Hope. And hope, as humanity had shown, could change everything.